that when you have democracy, when you have elections, before a society is fully matured in civil society and the like, sometimes the bad guys win. And what do you do when the bad guys win? Well, we faced this quite a few times during the period of my tenure in office. We saw Hamas win in the 2006 elections in the Palestinian territories. We saw Hezbollah do well in the 2007 elections in the 2005 elections in Lebanon. We saw Islamist parties do well in the first elections in Iraq. But you know, an interesting thing has happened. The second time around, the extremists have not done very well at all. And one wonders why that is. Well, I would suggest to you that while elections are not the only step that one must take toward democracy, they are a fully necessary step. And what you see is that in authoritarian societies, particularly in the Middle East, there was politics going on, but it was going on in the radical mosques and it was going on in the radical madrasas. And decent political forces were not allowed to organize. And in that freedom gap, as a group of Arab intellectuals called it, you got not only the organization of the most extreme forces, but you also got the kind of nihilist forces like Al-Qaeda, a different kind of politics. Decent political forces did not come into being in the Middle East. But now in freer environments like Lebanon and Iraq, and even the Palestinian territories, you are seeing that decent political forces the second time around are doing better. So in Lebanon, my favorite example, Hezbollah lost in this last election. Now, why did Hezbollah lose? Well, in part because it turns out that they weren't the great resistance movement. They used their arms against the Lebanese people in May of 2007. And you know what? The Lebanese people had a way to punish them. They punished them at the ballot box. Where else could the Lebanese people have punished a terrorist group like Hezbollah? You see in Iraq that in the most recent provincial elections, the Islamist parties, the most extremist parties, the parties funded by Iran, lost. And more decent political parties did better. I think that it is quite possible that what we will see is that as elections take place, in the first round, the bad guys may indeed win because they're the best organized, they were in the radical mosques, they were in the radical madrasas. But as time goes on, the slogan, make your children, vote for us, and we will make your children suicide bombers, won't do very well at the ballot box. And if decent political forces with a different message can come forward, then this will turn out for the better. So I don't think that there are really good arguments for those who say that either the United States should not advocate for democracy, should not make it a pillar of foreign policy, or that we should just wait until it somehow naturally emerges, as if democracy somehow naturally emerges. People fight for democracy, and America has to be their ally in that fight. To be sure, elections are not sufficient. We have to support democratically elected governments because one important thing happens when people go to the ballot box, they expect more of their governments. And that's why foreign assistance in the Bush administration, we attempted to tie to democratic processes, to good governance, to the absence of corruption, and it's why countries like Ghana, that President Obama just visited, were granted huge amounts of money for their size, more than $500 million to Ghana, or Tanzania, more than $800 million to Tanzania, because these were places that were trying to govern wisely, trying to govern democratically, and they need support so that their people can see that they can deliver. It's also true that it's not a straight line. There will be ups and downs. It will go back and forth. And part of the issue is not to lose heart when it does. Because we have to remember that history has a long tail. not a short one. I used to make not very many friends in the press when I would say to them that today's headlines and history's judgment are rarely the same. But it is true. If you look to any point in time, you can see that there were times when something looked so impossible, and not very long after, it just seemed inevitable. You know, at the State Department, I used to take people through a little soliloquy about the period immediately after World War II to demonstrate this point. Because I was lucky enough in 1989 to 1991 to be the White House Soviet specialist at the end of the Cold War. It doesn't get much better than that.